Today, we are going to discuss two extremely iconic stories that took place in Kaohsiung, Taiwan. On the morning of April 22, 2003, a man named Mr. Lu rushed to the police station to report his sister's disappearance. He stated that his sister, Jinhui, had not returned home the previous night and he couldn't reach her on the phone. Mr. Lu recalled that before leaving the house, his sister had told the family that she was meeting a friend for lunch. After leaving, she disappeared without a trace. First, let's take a look at the personal information of the missing person. Lu Jinhui, 42 years old, was a successful businesswoman. She had been married in the past but later divorced. After her divorce, she dedicated herself entirely to her work. Jinhui's family was well known in the local area of Fangshan. Most of the family members were involved in real estate, and they were also active in charitable work. The wealth of the family was widely known. This is why the family feared that she might have become a target for kidnapping. After receiving the report, the police initially thought it was a regular missing person case. They assumed that perhaps her phone had run out of battery, or that she had some urgent matter and forgot to inform the family. However, given Jinhui's background, the police didn't take this lightly and immediately began investigating her usual associates and frequent locations. They also reassured Mr. Lu, stating that they couldn't yet determine whether it was a kidnapping or something else, so he shouldn't worry too much and to contact them if there was any new information. But the worst fear soon became a reality. Around 10 a.m., shortly after Mr. Lu reported the case, he received a call from an unknown number. The caller claimed to be from a gang and said that Jinhui was their guest. He explained that they had committed a crime and needed to flee but had no money, so they were demanding a ransom of 12 million new Taiwan dollars. Mr. Lu asked to hear his sister's voice to confirm that she was still alive and well. Normally, kidnappers would agree to this request to reassure the family, but strangely, the kidnapper refused. He said that if Mr. Lu didn't believe him, he could go to a telephone pole in front of Shengguang Hospital to find Jinhui's car keys, and the car would be parked at a nearby McDonald's parking lot. Mr. Lu followed the instructions and found both the car keys and the car. At this point, he was convinced that his sister had indeed been kidnapped. He immediately reported the findings to the police. The police, realizing the seriousness of the situation, quickly formed a special team to investigate. First, they checked surveillance cameras around the area where the keys and car were found. Although the area had cameras, unfortunately, the key locations were in blind spots. After reviewing all the footage from the day of the incident, the police didn't find any valuable clues. Unable to gather information through the surveillance footage, the police shifted their focus to investigating the kidnapper's phone number. They discovered that the kidnapper was using a roaming card, a type of SIM card registered under someone else's identity, typically using the name of a foreign spouse. As a result, the police couldn't trace the true identity of the person behind the phone number. To buy more time, the police instructed the family to continue negotiating with the kidnapper. Soon after, the kidnapper called again, and following the police's guidance, the family began to negotiate. The kidnapper demanded a ransom of 12 million new Taiwan dollars. The family explained that although they had the money, such a large sum of cash wasn't easily accessible, and they needed to go to the bank and secure some collateral. Perhaps fearing a mistake would occur with the delay, after some bargaining, the ransom amount was reduced from 12 million new Taiwan dollars to 10 million new Taiwan dollars, and finally, to 8 million new Taiwan dollars. The kidnapper had specific demands regarding the ransom, such as it must be placed in a travel bag, with no serial numbers on the bills, and no tracking devices or self-destructive explosives. The family continued to discuss these details with the kidnapper in an effort to prolong the time, providing an opportunity for the police. After conducting their investigation, the police uncovered several leads. Based on information from the family, it was revealed that Jinhui had a lunch appointment with a friend that day, suggesting that she knew the kidnapper. The police went through Jinhui's contact records and compiled a list of over a dozen possible suspects. Upon checking Jinhui's bank transaction history, they quickly identified a suspicious suspect, Rong. The records showed that Jinhui had transferred money to Rong every few months, with amounts ranging from 40,000 to 100,000 new Taiwan dollars. The last transfer was on April 7th, approximately 2 weeks before the incident occurred. Most importantly, through their investigation, the police discovered that Rong was heavily in debt, making him the prime suspect. However, since they still didn't know if the victim was alive or dead, the police didn't act hastily and only assigned agents to surveil Rong's whereabouts. The police monitored Ouyang Rong 24/7, but found that every time he left the house, he appeared to be aimlessly wandering. The surveillance agents spent the whole day following him, yet they found no trace of Jinhui, nor did they see him bringing food to her. The police began to wonder if they had made a mistake. As time passed, on the third day after the incident, in the afternoon of April 24th, the kidnapper called Mr. Lu again, asking if the 8 million new Taiwan dollar ransom was ready. When Mr. Lu confirmed that it was, the kidnapper instructed him to go to a nearby barbershop in 15 minutes and wait by the phone there. This move by the kidnapper surprised the police. Although the barbershop was just over 100 meters from Mr. Lu's home, moving the eavesdropping equipment and reconnecting it would take some time. The kidnapper's intent was clear: to disrupt the police's plan and throw Mr. Lu off their surveillance. With time running out and no time for further setup, the deputy chief of the criminal team directly disguised himself as a customer and ambushed the barbershop first. Mr. Lu followed the instructions and arrived at the barbershop after 15 minutes. Soon after, the barbershop's phone rang. The kidnapper said over the phone that the ransom would be exchanged the next afternoon in Yongkang, Tainan, but didn't specify the exact location, telling Mr. Lu he would be informed at the last minute. He also instructed Mr. Lu to stay at home and wait for the phone call before taking action. The kidnapper made a series of demands, including that no tracking devices be attached, among other things. Eventually, he asked Mr. Lu to synchronize his watch with his, ensuring that the time was accurate to the second, with no discrepancies allowed. The police speculated that the kidnapper was relying on this precise timing plan to make it difficult for them to predict his actions. Since the location for the ransom drop would only be revealed at the last minute, the police would have no idea what the kidnapper was planning until then. Meanwhile, officers were still surveilling Rong. However, at this point, the police were not entirely sure that Rong was the kidnapper. The following day, Rong made a move. A field agent noticed Rong driving on the Zhongshan Expressway, then stopping at a utility pole near the Dingshan intersection. He stuck a piece of paper on the pole and quickly drove off. The police approached and checked the paper, which read, "Mr. Zhang, keep driving straight through 8 red lights, then wait for 10 minutes in front of the Dalyu Tong supermarket. The speed will be provided to you." Mr. Zhang here referred to Mr. Lu Jinhui's brother. It was clear that this was the location for the ransom exchange. The police, fearing they might alert the kidnapper, refrained from tearing down the note. At this point, they had confirmed that Ouyang Rong was the kidnapper, but they still didn't know where Jinhui was, so they dared not act too hastily. They continued to monitor Rong's movements as he returned home. However, curiously, Mr. Lu never received a call from the kidnapper. Given the urgency, the police decided to act. With Rong identified as the kidnapper, they issued an order to raid his home. Armed with real firearms, the police quickly entered and arrested Rong. They also found 3 burner SIM cards on him, but Rong was the only person in the house. There was no sign of Jinhui. The police then took Rong in for questioning. He stubbornly denied any involvement with Jinhui's disappearance, insisting that he had only pretended to be the kidnapper to extort money from the family. He repeatedly stated that he truly didn't know where Jinhui was. The police didn't believe his explanation. They then conducted a thorough search of Ouyang Rong's residence. In the bathroom, they noticed a strong smell of disinfectant and discovered traces of blood in the drain. The blood was later confirmed to be Jinhui's. Additionally, the police retrieved security camera footage from the building's elevator, showing that on the night of the incident, Rong had taken several black trash bags outside. A neighbor saw him carrying these bags alone and offered to help, but Rong declined. At this point, the police suspected that the kidnapper had killed Jinhui, but they couldn't understand why he would have rushed to kill her so suddenly. With this new evidence, the police conducted another round of questioning with Rong. Initially, they believed that some pressure would get him to confess, but after several rounds of questioning, he still refused to admit to the crime. The police officer patiently persuaded him, saying, "We only want to find the body. You're only guilty of corpse desecration." Jinhui's brother, Mr. Lu, also promised that if Rong revealed where his sister was, he would give 8 million new Taiwan dollars as an educational fund for Rong's children. Rong remained silent for a long time, eventually giving a second confession. To allow everyone to assess the authenticity of this statement, let's first understand the relationship between Rong and Lu Jinhui. Rong, 47 years old, was once a senior manager at a paper mill, but was fired in April 1999. Afterward, his investments failed, and his stocks lost money, leaving him with massive debts. In December 1999, he rented a shop owned by Jinhui, the victim, to open a cafe. The two became acquainted this way. However, Rong's cafe couldn't last long and closed the following year. With no job, he relied on his speaking skills to gain Jinhui's trust and sympathy. Jinhui believed he was talented, but simply hadn't found success. Additionally, Rong's ex-wife had passed away in a car accident a few years before, and raising his child alone was difficult. As a friend, Jinhui lent him money every few months, ranging from 40,000 to 160,000 new Taiwan dollars each time, thinking that her friendship was worth supporting him. Rong later shifted to the pet business. From October 2000 to April 2003, a month before the incident, Jinhui continued to assist him. In Rong's second confession, he stated that he and Jinhui were in a romantic relationship. On April 21st, he had lunch with Jinhui at McDonald's, after which she rode in his car to his home. Later, they became intimate. While they were in the bathroom, Jinhui discovered that Rong had another girlfriend behind her back. This made her extremely angry, and the two had a heated argument in the bathroom. Rong claimed that Jinhui accidentally slipped, hitting her head on the ceramic tiles on the stairs, which led to her death. Fearing he would be discovered, he panicked and dismembered the body into several pieces, placing them in 10 bags. 6 were discarded at a garbage station by the road in Niaosong village, and 4 were thrown in a bamboo forest behind the Guanhu Mountain Villa complex. Afterward, he used soap and disinfectants to clean the crime scene. Once he had cleaned up, Rong noticed Jinhui's phone, and then came up with the idea to pretend to be the kidnapper in order to extort money from the family, making them believe Jinhui was still alive. This is Rong's second confession. When the police heard that Jinhui had been dismembered, they immediately acted, trying to recover the body parts that had been taken away by a garbage truck, but it was too late. 6 bags of body parts, including the head, had already been incinerated. Following Rong's instructions, the police later found the remaining 4 bags of body parts. Upon opening these 4 bags, they discovered a total of 18 body parts, but these pieces could not be reassembled into a complete body. After DNA testing, these body parts were confirmed to belong to Jinhui. In addition, the police found a kitchen knife, a steel hammer, a cutting board, and a utility knife in the bushes. Upon examination, all of these items had Jinhui's blood on them. The police also found 6 sleeping pills in Rong's car, along with a detailed plan outlining the entire extortion process. However, the strange thing was that this plan made no mention of killing Lu Jinhui. Although the perpetrator had been arrested and part of the body had been found, Rong still insisted that he had only dismembered the body and did not kill Jinhui. He continued to claim that Jinhui had died from a slip and fall in the bathroom and specifically mentioned a broken tile in the bathroom, saying it was caused by her fall. Rong's explanation seemed plausible at first, but after investigating, the police found several suspicious points. First, if Jinhui really died from an accident, why didn't Rong immediately report it to the police? Instead, he chose to handle the body in such a brutal way. Furthermore, when the police took Rong to the scene for identification, they discovered that the location of the broken tile didn't match his statement at the police station. Moreover, despite Rong being deeply in debt, the police discovered that his underage daughter was listed as the owner of a house worth hundreds of millions of new Taiwan dollars. Additionally, at the time of the incident, Rong was living with a girlfriend and giving her a substantial monthly living allowance. It turned out that Rong was receiving financial support from Jinhui, while also giving that money to his girlfriend. Furthermore, a friend of the victim, Jinhui, revealed that before the incident, Jinhui had mentioned that Rong wanted to borrow a large sum of money for an investment, but she had refused. The police believe that Rong may have had the intention to kill for extortion because Jinhui had stopped giving him money. They speculate that from the beginning, his plan may have been to kill her because they were too familiar with each other. If the victim had lived, she would undoubtedly have recognized him later. Additionally, 3 burner SIM cards found on Rong were purchased from a flea market at the end of March, a month before the incident. This suggests that he had prepared in advance. As for the cause of death, due to the lack of many body parts, the forensic team was unable to immediately determine the exact cause of Jinhui's death. Additionally, as previously mentioned, 6 sleeping pills were found in Rong's car. Forensic experts tested the body parts but found no traces of the sleeping pills in the muscle tissues. However, considering other circumstances, forensic experts speculated that Jinhui may have taken these pills before her death. The forensic experts explained that this type of medication typically induces drowsiness about 30 minutes after consumption, slowing down a person's consciousness and movements. Initially, the drug primarily distributes in the blood, with only a small amount reaching the muscles. This also explains why no toxic reaction was detected in the body parts. However, Ouyang Rong did not accept these explanations. He insisted that he did not murder Jinhui. He claimed that he had no motive to kill her. Despite his business failures, he said he was not poor enough to resort to murder for money. He also stated that he wasn't as deeply in debt as the authorities believed. The police later found Rong's daughter. When questioned, she revealed that recently, relatives had frequently come to their home demanding money. Based on this information, the police determined that Rong had a motive for committing the crime. Rong was then subjected to a lie detector test. The first question asked was, "Did you kill Lu Jinhui?" The second question was, "In this case, did you kill Jinhui?" The third question was, "Did you lie about Jinhui's death when she was with you?" Rong answered no to all. However, the lie detector results showed that his responses were deceptive. Although Rong denied committing murder, the prosecutor still charged him with kidnapping, extortion, and intentional murder. On April 16, 2004, the Kaohsiung District Court sentenced Rong to death in the first trial. The case was appealed multiple times until October 18, 2010, for a total of 8 trials, 6 of which resulted in a death sentence. Rong's appeal reasons were varied. One of his arguments was that the police had collected evidence illegally, claiming they had interrogated his daughter late at night. Another reason for his appeal was that the criminal plan only demonstrated the extortion process, but did not directly prove his intent to kill Jinhui, so he argued that there was no direct evidence of murder. Rong also argued that the blood traces in the bathroom, the burner SIM cards, and the forensic expert's testimony could all have different interpretations, making it impossible to directly confirm his involvement in the murder. While Jinhui's case still had not reached a final conclusion, another shocking case surfaced. The family of Rong's ex-wife reported that his ex-wife and daughter had both died under suspicious circumstances a few years earlier, and Rong had received about 12 million new Taiwan dollars in insurance money. His former father-in-law accused Ouyang Rong of killing his wife and daughter for the insurance money. The police received the report and reviewed the related documents from those years. The documents showed that both Rong's wife and daughter had been determined to have died in accidents. In 1999, Rong had an argument with his wife at home, and shortly after she left on her motorcycle. Not long after, she was found dead in a drainage ditch in the villages of Yuan and Daliao. The police concluded that she had fallen into the ditch and drowned, treating the incident as a motorcycle accident. The following year, Rong's daughter, who was studying in college, fell from the upper bunk in her dormitory, causing a swollen head, but there was no immediate concern. However, when she returned home for a break, she drowned in the bathtub. The police concluded that the cause of death might have been a brain injury that led to complications, causing her to faint while bathing and fall into the tub, resulting in drowning. They found no signs of foul play. However, When the dismemberment case of Jinhui was revealed, Rong's ex-wife's family questioned these events and requested that the police reopen the investigations into both incidents. Due to the long passage of time, it was difficult to find evidence, and ultimately, the prosecutor decided not to press charges regarding the deaths of Rong's wife and daughter due to insufficient evidence. Now, let's return to the case of Jinhui's dismemberment. This case lasted for 8 years. Despite Rong's various defenses, on March 31, 2011, the Supreme Court concluded that Rong had used an undetermined method to kill Jinhui, then proceeded to dismember and dispose of her body. The court sentenced Rong to death based on these charges. While awaiting execution, Rong continuously claimed his innocence and wrote a long letter in prison to justify himself. Here are a few key points from his letter. He argued that he was convicted for an unclear method of murder, despite not committing the murder. He asked, "What is this unclear method? What kind of knife? What kind of stick? What kind of poison? How was the strangulation done?" He claimed that the court shot the arrow first and then drew the target, explaining that the evidence was used to legitimize the murder conviction. He admitted that, out of selfishness, he made a significant mistake by trying to cover up Jinhui's death at his house, but he emphasized that he did not kill her. Additionally, he mentioned that he had written letters and called to apologize to Jinhui's mother, but later the judge forbade him from contacting the victim's family. As of now, Ouyang Rong is still awaiting his execution in prison. Are his justifications in prison his last attempt to save himself, or are there truly unresolved details in the case? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. That concludes the first case. Now, let's move on to the second case. The story takes place in Tin Shui Wai, Hong Kong. On the night of April 3, 2002, a man named Wen Wanliang received a call from his sister-in-law who was trying to contact her sister, Wen's wife. However, since Wen's wife was in the hospital recovering and unable to answer the phone, when the caller realized that her brother-in-law had answered, she hesitated and then hung up without saying anything. Wen felt something was wrong. He noticed that his sister-in-law's voice sounded weak and unusual, as if she were struggling to speak. This raised his suspicions, so he decided to take his son and go to his sister-in-law's apartment to check on her. At around 11:45 p.m., they arrived at Tiansong Yuan in Tin Shui Wai, where his sister-in-law lived. As soon as they stepped off the elevator, they noticed a foul odor filling the entire floor. Wen and his son approached apartment 404, where his sister-in-law lived. They realized that the strange smell seemed to be coming from her apartment. They knocked on the door, but there was no response. Wen sensed something was wrong and quickly called the police. By the early morning, the police and firefighters had arrived at the scene. They borrowed a neighbor's kitchen, climbed through the window, and entered the apartment. They immediately discovered the source of the foul smell, and a tragic story began to unfold. Upon entering the apartment, the police and firefighters were greeted by cold air from the air conditioner and the overpowering stench. They then saw a woman sitting on the sofa in the living room, semi-conscious and dazed. This woman was Wen's sister-in-law, Yuan Xunying. Yuan's left wrist had a clear wound from a knife, and there were several empty sleeping pill bottles nearby. It appeared she had attempted suicide. However, the strange thing was that the foul smell in the room was not coming from her. The police continued their search and soon discovered a shocking scene in the bedroom. A naked man's body lying on the bed, his head wrapped in tape like a mummy, and his hands and feet tightly bound with tape. The body had begun to decompose and change color. Next to the bed were a chopping board, a kitchen knife, scissors, and a pool of blood. However, the room was neatly organized, with no signs of a struggle. Rescue workers immediately administered first aid to Yuan Xunying and rushed her to the hospital for treatment, later transferring her to the intensive care unit. Since she could be involved in the murder, the police assigned a female officer to guard her hospital room. The case was later taken over by the Tin Shui Wai Major Crime Unit, which determined that it was a murder-suicide. During the investigation, the police discovered a pot of moldy soup in Yuan's kitchen. The forensic team took these items along with the victim's body for examination and testing to determine the cause of death. The test results revealed that the victim's body contained sedatives and sleeping pills, but he didn't die from an overdose. He died from asphyxiation. Additionally, the forensic team found sedatives and sleeping pills in the moldy soup. It seemed the victim had drunk this soup before dying. Upon examination, the forensic team found no obvious external injuries on the body. The blood at the scene, after testing, was confirmed to belong to Yuan. Furthermore, the victim's head had been wrapped with 15 layers of tape and had been dead for 4 to 8 days. Fingerprints from Yuan were found on the tape around the victim's head. It was clear that Yuan was likely the primary suspect. But why did she kill this man? A naked man bound tightly and a woman unconscious at the scene, the police were also confused by this case and could only wait for Yuan to wake up to get the answers. After regaining consciousness, Yuan cooperated fully with the police investigation and detailed everything that had happened. Yuan, born in 1963, was 39 years old at the time of the incident and was from Heiwan City in Guangdong Province. At the time, she was the manager of a restaurant. Although not tall, she had an elegant face and maintained her charm even at nearly 40 years old. Let's rewind back to 1989 when Yuan, aged 26, was working in Shenzhen. Through friends, she met Zhou Guoqiang, a Hong Kong man who was 11 years older than her. At the time, Guoqiang worked in construction with a monthly income of around 1,000 Hong Kong dollars. He frequently bought gold chains, rings, and other gifts for Yuan. 2 months after meeting, they quickly got married in mainland China. Guoqiang gave Yuan a monthly allowance of 2,000 Hong Kong dollars. Every weekend, Guoqiang would visit Yuan in Shenzhen, and Yuan also frequently visited him in Hong Kong. During this time, Yuan had 2 sons in mainland China. By 1997, Yuan finally obtained a one-way entry permit and officially moved with her 2 sons to Hong Kong. Not long after moving to Hong Kong, Guoqiang faced difficulties in business and had to work as a truck driver, transporting goods between mainland China and Hong Kong. Yuan also started working at a restaurant. Both of them worked hard, and in just 2 short years, they were able to buy their own home in Tin Shui Wai. However, the good times didn't last long. Later, Guoqiang became addicted to horse racing and gambling, accumulating over $20,000 in gambling debts. Yuan had no choice but to work even harder to help her husband pay off the debt. But family issues continued to arise. In 2000, Yuan Xunying went to a karaoke session with her husband Guoqiang and some friends. Yuan noticed that Guoqiang seemed too familiar with the KTV environment. This made her start to suspect that her husband might frequently visit places like this, even flirting with other women. As a result, she openly confronted her husband. Guoqiang felt very embarrassed and angry and impatiently slapped her. This slap made Yuan seriously consider divorce. Later, she caught her husband calling a woman in the middle of the night. This confirmed her suspicions that her husband was cheating on her. From then on, she was completely disappointed with him. Just when their relationship was at a breaking point, another man entered Yuan's life and became a turning point for her. This man was the victim, Chen Yongxin. Yongxin, born in 1972, was 30 years old and 9 years younger than Yuan. He was from Dongguan City in Guangdong Province. After graduating from middle school, he trained as a pastry chef. In 1995, he moved to Hong Kong to continue his work as a pastry chef. Yongxin was tall, handsome, and had polite manners. One was a restaurant manager, and the other was a pastry chef at the restaurant. They met like this. Although Yongxin knew that Yuan was married and had 2 children, he persistently pursued her. Eventually, under his intense pursuit, Yuan became emotionally moved, and they began an extramarital affair. After 2 months of passionate love, Chen Yongxin took Yuan to his hometown in Dongguan. At first, when he was pursuing Yuan, Yongxin told her he was single. But when they went to his hometown, Yuan noticed many photos of Yongxin with a woman in his house. She directly asked him what was going on. Yongxin then confessed that he had been married since 1994 and had 2 daughters, one aged 4 and the other 8. His wife and children lived in mainland China. However, Yongxin told Yuan that his marriage was just a formality, that he was in the process of getting a divorce, and promised Yuan that by March 29, 2002, he would officially marry her. Love can sometimes blind people. Yuan believed Yongxin's words and decided to continue this improper relationship. She was completely captivated by his sweet talk, ignoring everything else. Her colleagues noticed her with a married man and often whispered behind her back, but Yuan didn't care at all and decided to divorce her unfaithful and gambling husband. By the end of 2001, Yuan's husband, Guoqiang, was deeply in debt, on the brink of bankruptcy, and came to borrow money from Yuan. But Yuan ignored him, refused to lend him any money, and even suggested a divorce. Guoqiang thought Yuan's actions were to keep the house in case of bankruptcy, so he agreed to the divorce. But he never expected that Yuan was actually doing this because of a new lover. Moreover, Yuan knew that Yongxin didn't like her two sons. To prevent her children from becoming an obstacle to her new marriage, she even gave her ex-husband custody of the children and was ready to dedicate her life to Yongxin. Yongxin even helped her with the divorce procedures. The reason Yuan trusted Chen Yongxin was also related to another event. In January 2002, Yongxin's wife, Lin Keixia, came to Hong Kong from mainland China to visit him. Yuan was very upset when she found out. To comfort her, Yongxin abandoned his wife in Hong Kong and publicly took Yuan to travel to Thailand. This gesture deeply moved Yuan and made her believe in Yongxin's true love even more. After returning from Thailand, Yongxin told Yuan that his wife had agreed to the divorce and that when her dual-entry visa expired, she would return to mainland China to finalize the divorce. By mid-March, about 2 weeks before the incident, Yuan's ex-husband and sons moved out of their home in Tin Shui Wai. As soon as her ex-husband left, Yongxin moved in with Yuan, and they began living together. Both of them thought that they could finally be together forever, but little did they know that things would take a sudden 180-degree turn. On March 28th, Yuan and Yongxin both requested 2 days off. At 3 p.m., they went to a jewelry store in Sim Sha Tsui. Yongxin spent 3,100 Hong Kong dollars to buy a diamond ring for Yuan. Although this diamond ring was not very expensive, it meant a lot to Yuan because it symbolized that Yongxin would keep his promise and marry her. On that day, Yuan was in a good mood and even prepared a hearty meal, wanting to nourish Chen Yongxin's health. However, unexpectedly, during dinner, Yongxin suddenly suggested breaking up with Yuan, saying that he didn't want to become the second Chen Jiankang. Who is Chen Jiankang? This was a well-known case that occurred in Hong Kong in 1998. Chen Jiankang, a man who already had a wife, was having an affair, which eventually led to his wife and 2 children committing suicide by jumping off a building. This case had been discussed by the show host earlier, and interested viewers can review it. When Yuan heard Yongxin say he didn't want to become the second Chen Jiankang, she couldn't believe her ears. It turned out that Yongxin gave her the diamond ring not as a proposal to marry her, but as compensation for their breakup. Yuan asked what had happened. Yongxin revealed that a few days before, his wife had called and threatened him, saying that if he didn't break up with Yuan, she would take their 2 daughters and jump off a building, making him the second Chen Jiankang. After hearing Yongxin's words, Yuan felt as if she had fallen from heaven into hell and didn't know what to do. She absent-mindedly walked into the kitchen and looked at the pot of soup she had just finished cooking. At that moment, she took a desperate step. While Yongxin was watching TV, she secretly dropped 5 sleeping pills into the soup, hoping that after drinking it, he would sleep soundly, and when he woke up, he would change his mind. The next day, Chen Yongxin woke up and still insisted on breaking up. Therefore, Yuan drugged him again that evening, hoping to keep him with her this way. That night, the 2 of them were intimate again. Yuan thought this might help keep Yongxin's heart, but unexpectedly after it was over, Yongxin said, "After tonight, I won't come back." At this point, Yuan was completely devastated. She didn't want their relationship to end like this. Suddenly, a terrible thought crossed her mind: tie Yongxin up, and he wouldn't leave. She then used leather tape and started to execute her plan. Normally, with Yongxin's strong physique, he should have been able to resist Yuan's control, but Yuan waited until the sleeping pills took effect, and he had no strength left to fight back before tying his hands and feet with the tape. Although Yongxin couldn't physically resist, he still struggled and said, You can tie me up for a moment, but not for a lifetime. His words angered Yuan once again. She didn't want to hear him talk anymore, so she taped his mouth and nose and covered his head with a blanket. Yongshin struggled on the bed and shouted, "Are you trying to suffocate me?" Soon after, Yongshin stopped resisting, and his body went limp. Yuan was horrified to realize that Yongshin had died. Yuan initially planned to commit suicide next to Yongshin, but she wanted to see her two sons one last time. On the morning of April 2nd, she arranged to meet her sons at a bus stop in Tiansong Yuan, Tin Shui Wai. Unfortunately, only one of her sons showed up to meet her. When she saw her son, Yuan was filled with love and regret. She said to him, "You've lost so much weight. I love you so much. You must listen to your father and study hard." Then she gave him a bag of his favorite snacks. After their brief meeting, Yuan saw her son off at the bus stop, watching as the bus drove away. Returning home, Yuan lay next to Yongshin's body, intending to commit suicide by cutting her wrist. However, the bleeding quickly stopped. She even took a cleaver, intending to chop off her arm, but ultimately she lacked the courage. So she decided to take sleeping pills. She visited the doctor for 2 consecutive days to get more sleeping pills, but the quantity was insufficient. After that, she went directly to a pharmacy and purchased 180 sleeping pills, swallowing them all at once when she got home. However, it didn't work, because after ingesting them, she began vomiting severely. She then called her sister, but her brother-in-law answered the phone. He sensed something was wrong with her voice and decided to visit her to check on the situation. This was when the tragic story began to unfold. At that point, Yuan had been in the room with the body for 4 days. On June 9th, 2003, the Tin Shui Wai District Court held a trial. Yuan Xunying was charged with murder. The victim's wife, Lin Kaixia, also attended the trial as a witness. She sat in the front row, staring angrily at Yuan in the defendant's seat. The prosecutor called upon doctors and the prosecutor, all of whom pointed out that Yuan was mentally stable when committing the crime and did not suffer from any mental illness. In court, Yuan cried emotionally, "I deeply regret it. I shouldn't have done this. I wish I had died instead. His death was so tragic and I don't know how to atone for it. I hope the judge can reduce my sentence." When the diamond breakup ring was presented in court, Yuan lost control of her emotions, causing the trial to be paused. The judge had to temporarily suspend the proceedings for her to calm down before continuing the trial. On June 12th, when the trial resumed, the defense lawyer called in a psychiatrist to testify on behalf of the defendant. The expert stated that due to having experienced an unhappy marriage, Yuan became extremely dependent on Yongshin after being with him. Because of this relationship, she even gave up her family. After Chen Yongshin gave her the diamond ring, she was certain they would marry. But when Yongshin suddenly suggested breaking up, she was completely unprepared, which caused her emotional breakdown, leading to her actions of rendering Yongshin unconscious and suffocating him. The expert also pointed out that the defendant's mental state at the time of the crime was extremely disordered to the point of being abnormal. Her suicide attempt proved that she was in a deeply distressed mental state. Therefore, the defense's psychiatrist argued that due to the defendant's mental condition, her sentence should be reduced. Finally, the jury, consisting of 4 men and 3 women, deliberated for 5 hours and unanimously declared that Yuan was guilty of murder. According to the law, the judge sentenced her to life imprisonment. After hearing the verdict, Yuan silently lowered her head. The wife of Chen Yongshin smiled after hearing the verdict. In an interview outside the court, she expressed her satisfaction with the sentence and stated that Yuan deserved to be punished. But this case is not over yet. Yuan's ex-husband, Guo Qiang, still loved his ex-wife deeply. When he learned that the reason for their divorce was because she had a new lover, he didn't blame her for being unfaithful. Instead, he felt that he himself had been too preoccupied with financial issues and neglected her, which ultimately led to their relationship reaching this point. Although they had signed the divorce papers, it was a coincidence that the paperwork had an error and needed to be re-signed. Guo Qiang told his lawyer that he would not sign again. Since the divorce was not legally binding, Yuan remained his legal wife. Guoqiang even specifically asked their two sons if they had forgiven their mother. Both of them said they had forgiven her. Therefore, he decided to wait for Yuan to be released from prison to rebuild their family. After that, Guoqiang, as her husband, filed an appeal on Yuan's behalf. The reason for the appeal was that he believed the police had interrogated Yuan when she was under the influence of drugs and in an unstable mental state. At that time, the defendant was completely unaware of her rights and couldn't remember what she had said. However, the appellate court ruled that Yuan Xunying was fully conscious at the time and fully understood what was happening around her, so the appeal was rejected. With this, the case was closed. Love is not everything in marriage, and marriage is not the end of love. It is not a short-lived pleasure, but a lifelong companionship. Blindly chasing the intensity of love only leads people astray.